Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Thomas Gall and Lars Magnuson.
Thank you. Okay.
So, thank you
jump in.
for coming here. I'm Lars.
Yep, I'm Thomas. Hi.
Yeah. just to know the difference. We are going to talk to you about the Internet of Supply Chains today. Thomas.
Okay, great. Well, as a very first thought, think about the topic of being digitally ready, or ready to go digital. And to help us then start that thinking process, I have a couple of questions. Do you have the supply chain visibility? Actually, everything that's the holy grail we've been talking about for a long time. Do you have it now, down into your supply network? Another question, we know that the world of the IoT is going to flood us with more and more data points. And so how are we now, or how can we now, and how are you actually managing this flood and then controlling this data coming in? But of course, more importantly, what are you doing with it? And then also, EDIs and supply portals, has that brought us into the world of digital collaboration? EDI and supply portal is actually just the old-fashioned power game. The more powerful partner telling the other partner, get into EDI or get into my supply portal, and nobody likes it. And then also, I'd like to bring across the point, the data that we do have, this world of big data, what is value, using this big data? And then we're suggesting a three-level, almost like a maturity way of using that data. Level one is simply that you've standardized the data, that you're taking transactional effort out, using the big data that you have. No more data cleaning. Your employees, staff has the data that they need. They have data that enriches their decision support processes, that they can more quickly get to that decision-making process. That's level one. And level two is then when you really start to do cool things with it, when you start to automate processes. You can, in the buyer-supplier interface, you can automate updates of price lists, updating product master data, etc. And then the ultimate promise is level three, where we really are talking about smart collaboration. You're collaborating with a partner on data. You have visibility down to tier 3, tier 2 with your suppliers. The data that you're sharing, you can do joint analytics on. You can draw correlations across this end-to-end value network. Then things are really getting smart. And it really is a maturity model. You have to go step by step. The dilemma that we have is, the data that we have out there is actually starts as dumb, big data. And again, this topic of dilemma, we've been there before trying to tackle this problem. We all have for a very long time. And some thoughts on that. Did the promise of supply chain control towers ever come through? Or the topic of business objects. Remember, SAP Business Objects was also a very big topic for a while, creating a massive dictionary of your terms in your company and then trying to do something with it. But they have not delivered on the promise of easy access to data, and that the data making sense to the person, or it being smart, to the person or to the staff actually needing to use it or using it. Also, did you ever try to expand our current solutions for connectivity, EDI and supply portals beyond the basics of, order confirmation, ASN, invoice. And have fun trying to do that when you say, okay, you want to have the sensor data from the manufacturing line, from your suppliers. It's going to be too expensive and take too long to actually do that. And then also, I like to bring in, this topic of buzzwords, buzzword bingo. Everybody talks about AI, machine learning, et cetera, et cetera. And behind that is actually the idea, it's a machine that has to be fed, huge amounts of data. It's not going to work with just, small sets of data, clean data that you Now you take the time to actually manually clean the data and then feed it to a machine. The data has to be clean, has to be contextualized. It has to be defined in its relationship to all the other data points in that space. And if not, then really we're working off what we like to call dumb big data. And then any algorithm, AI, machine learning tool, it just is not going to work. You could have isolated pockets of it working fine, but that's not going to. But that's not the promise of the AI and then the machine learning world. So the problem is that we still have these disconnected data silos. Either your ERP, my ERP, your data model, my data model. The world of spreadsheets, trying to map, trying to bridge that problem, and then to really be digitally ready, you have to somehow tackle the problem of turning all that big data into a smart big data set. That's the dilemma. And what we would like to talk about is the new paradigm for sharing data, a digital supply network, is that we definitely need to have a cloud-based solution because of ease of access, mobile access. And the cloud-based solution, it's not simply a data warehouse in the cloud. Data is not stored there. It's using new emerging digital technologies from the world of semantic science, semantic data management, linked data technologies. And our goal is to have a business network, customers, partners, any partner, any supplier. And what this solution does is uses international standards, it uses technologies that are out there today, being used by the digital giants. It's all standardized through the World Wide Web Consortium. Amazon, Google, this is a way that they actually manage their data, where they can really turn their data into business value for their companies. Because we have this problem in managing the complexity of an end-to-end supply chain. All these different databases, and trying to connect from database 1 to database 2, it only works with very tight protocol-based communication solutions like EDI, supply portals, etc. So I hand it over to Lars.
Let's talk a little technobabble here. And this is where it starts to be interesting. You as supply chain professionals, how many of you has an IT background? A few. That's good. I like that. Because now this is where we kind of get into the fringes of the SCORE model, the fringes of supply chain management. I'm starting to kind of step into the area of information technology, information management, data modeling, and those type of things, which is important. But now, from the supply chain profession, we haven't worked very, very, very deep into that. So the first thing here is now all of us have different type of systems. They may speak different languages, and the traditional part here, and as Thomas said before here, now when we talk about EDI or portals, now you kind of force someone your bilateral interpretation of data onto someone else. And here is now the kind of the trick that we are trying to play. Now moving from bilateral to multilateral definitions of what does a truck mean? What does a package mean? What does a kilo mean? So that you are actually on common ground. And the thing here is, the new word that you will have to use here is either kind of vocabulary or, the first time I heard it, ontology. It's not oncology, and there are lots of colleges here, but it's ontology, which is the kind of the IT term for a dictionary, commonly used dictionary. What we try to do here is to sort of say, move away from being dependent on the underlying systems and their definitions, and putting a layer on top that allows you to kind of link one one can of data to another can of data, but without really the traditional way that you have done is that you put in a big HANA database or a big business warehouse in between, and then you kind of swap there. This is kind of in the cloud. So it is beyond the kind of the traditional business warehouse. To our help here, now we have 3 different components. The first one is what we call linked data, so which is the way where you actually, instead of what you do today, when you go into the World Wide Web and you click something, you end up with a document. Tim Berners-Lee, the creator of the internet, he has, if you can, there's some interesting TED Talks on this. He actually says that I did an error in '92. I shouldn't have linked documents. I should have linked data instead. But he missed the point. So he has converted to data management rather than document management. The other part here is the ontology, or the translation. What does a term mean? And here is now one of the reasons why we are working so close with Apex on this, because in the supply chain management domain, we have an ontology called a SCORE model. The thing here is, the problem we have is that it is an implicit data model. So we are working very hard right now to convert it into an explicit data model that your data, your IT colleagues can use as a means of translating data from A to B. And last but not least, the kind of the trust factor, the blockchain. We will touch on that just briefly. And there are others that are speaking in much more depth of this here at this conference. So if we go then to the kind of the semantic, oops, wrong way. In the traditional hierarchical data, now you talk about a thing. So you have an order response, you have a company, and you stop there. You put them in a hierarchical table, and then you have your own definition of this. What we are looking at here now with the semantic data management and the ontologies is that we actually add context to those. So we say that an order kind of belongs to a customer that is aimed at a company. We may have an order response that references an order. And all of these type of kind of logical links is what we are providing to the machine. So we give not only, so to say, data, but context to data. So this is like a glue that kind of links, so to say, words together in a way similar as us now. I don't speak a word of the other 11 languages that we have here in South Africa, but we have a kind of we use an ontology called English. So where I use and you understand, hopefully. My Swinglish can be bad at times. It's also, so to say, a way of kind of conceptualizing business models. So make it much easier in a layman's terms to talk about now what do I mean with things. So instead of getting a table, you get this type of, we call them knowledge graphs, and then you start to talk around those in layman terms rather than in IT technobabble terms. And I think the most important element here, now this, you see a graph here that we have borrowed from our colleagues at Infineon. Now, if you want to add something to this, you want to add a serial number, you want to add mode of transport, then you just kind of create a new link. You don't have to redefine your whole model. Which, if you are in a hierarchical view, you have to wait 6 months for the SAP team to redo the tables, because they have to be checked and done. Where here you can dynamically add things, and if it doesn't fit, well, take it away. So it's much more dynamic. And it is kind of much more business-oriented. To give you a more practical example, if you go into Google and you kind of ask for Daniel Craig, you will get, so to say, some answers. But behind there, in the Google machine today, there is, so to say, a logic that says, well, Daniel Craig stars in Casino Royale, an old movie. I don't know, the latest one I don't know. I think it's coming soon. Casino Royale is a movie. So I have an object, I have a predicate, I have a subject, I have a predicate, and I have an object. So I say, then Casino Royale is a movie. Actors stars in movies. Now, all of a sudden, I can, as an AI engine, I can start to draw conclusions. So, with these 3 facts, I know that Daniel Craig is an actor. I need these three statements, I need the data, I need the connections, and then I can start to draw conclusions. And here is the kind of the starting of AI, starting of smart big data that you see. Very, very simple example, but that's the way kind of the semantic part of this works. Second part here is the linked data. So let's assume I have my package, a couple of packages that I register in my cloud. There's a trucking company here, and they have their own cloud solution. So I take my packages, I ask someone to create a consignment of those, and then I hand over my packages to the transport company. Traditionally, then, I would have created a document. I say, here is a document, here is what I give you. But with the linked data, I would create what we call a unified resource identifier, a link to my box that will enable the carrier to go to my cloud and ask for all the metadata, all the kind of the facts surrounding box one. I will retain and give access to the transport company, and vice versa. I can go and say, okay, I have a consignment. Where did it go? But I'm no longer kind of resending the same amount of data over and over in paper form. And here we start to see a real revolution, because we are basing our analysis on facts, and we are basing it on kind of reuse of data. And this is now in our industries. Now, if you count in your own business, how much people do you have that are checking and rechecking and checking the quality of data? Here is a kind of one of the solutions that we have been looking for a long time to get into quality. So that's kind of the two of the technologies. The third one, blockchain, as we talked about, we are not going to dive into too much, but that is basically giving you the trust, so that when you get a consignment number and it's being transported over the internet to you, that nobody had tampered with it. So nobody has been there hacking your cloud or the sender's cloud, adding things, changing things. So building trust in, so to say, your data. And given the theme that we had here at the keynote this morning, I understand from a South African perspective, to know the data sources, that you are no one has tampered with your data, is utterly important. Not only for your own safety, and your own business, but for the society as a whole. Now, how do you build trust? And that's one very efficient means of doing that. Not the only way, but it's one very, very efficient way. So to tie this together, we have kind of, Thomas alluded to this in the beginning, where we had, so to say, a kind of a maturity model. This is something that we have worked together with Apix to develop. So there has been a team of experts that during the quarter one and quarter two of this year has been kind of putting this together as a platform for leading up to what we hope will be something, and we call it either it's, I don't know if it's going to be SCORE version 13 or if it's going to be SCORE digital SCORE, that is still being under discussion, but where we actually make the SCORE data model, we go from implicit to explicit data models in a semantic mode. So that when you start to kind of use look for data related to supply chain, be it metrics or best practices, will be kind of you will end up in this kind of Apix model as the kind of the default as a default solution. Of course, then anybody can build a solution like this. Now, if I build Lars's logistics model, well, I know Thomas may look at it, and perhaps a few other nerds, but you have to have some trust built into it. So that's why we are utilizing the credibility of Apix and Sapix. Now, Apix been around for 60 years, Sapix for 40 years, now to spin these type of things, where we know that these are professional bodies where a lot of knowledge has been retained over time. So what we're looking at here are kind of the three different layers of the model. As we have the kind of the data standardization, that's where we have the semantics, now the James Bond example. We have the kind of the collaboration part where you have, that's the linked data, where you connect over the clouds. And then on top of that, you could start to do the fancy stuff. And this is now where we met some of your managing directors on Saturday and had this discussion. This is where you tend to get the kind of, you call it bullshit bingo.
Or buzzword bingo.
Buzzword bingo, whatever you want to call it. No, where you want to do all the fancy stuff at once. So I want to have AI, I want to do this, I want to do that. But you forget about the other, the level 2 and level 1 work that you have to do, the kind of the prerequisites. But even if there are prerequisites, now you don't have to kind of boil the ocean to get going. And that is where we will show you now a couple of samples how we have done this in a piecemeal way, so that you can you can retain the maturity levels. You can use these 3 technologies that we're talking of, but do it kind of in a use case development mode.
Okay, thanks, Lars. Okay, yeah, we'd like to show you what work has been going on in industry. And we're working on this actually for a little while now. And then we tried to run small proof of concepts, pilots at our individual companies, and then we actually have had some success stories. So I wanted to show you that, even though it seems to be some topics that are way out there, but there is some foundational work that is going on, and it does represent a huge learning curve for everybody. So what we did is we took this idea of trying to gauge, are we digitally ready? Can we do something smart with the data? Can we create value with that data? And so we took this model and we thought, let's search for some use cases, some partners, where we try to tackle every level, starting at level 1, and then also basically seeing how far we can actually go, because it's as stated, it's a learning curve for all of us, and then also very frankly, I've also only been learning by doing with all of this. I'm not an IT person. So back in 2016, in the spring of 2016. We used the special focus forum mechanism. It's like a working group mechanism from APEX in the USA to form a neutral platform to get competitors like Nokia and Ericsson. That's where I met Lars. I used to work for Nokia back then. It would have been impossible to speak to Ericsson at that point, me being at Nokia. And we got Rohde & Schwarz. Rohde & Schwarz makes test equipment that is actually in both of Nokia's production lines and Ericsson's. Infineon, chip manufacturer, also delivering to Ericsson and Nokia. We really wanted to have a multi-tier group. Also, interestingly, SAP wanted to get involved because SAP is also faced with the challenge of what are they going to do with their monolithic ERP system in the world of digital, because they also openly admit that their this classic ERP model just is not going to work. So, and of course, then we had a partner, a small startup, actually in Germany called Essenza, that is really at the forefront of this world of information science and data sciences. That's where these skill sets are really coming from the information scientists who are out there. So, we all got together. Then we went back to our companies, and then we had small budgets for small innovation projects. And I have a couple of examples. Here's one where this is outward facing. I have one example, to the customer, but also one example of how you can use these technologies internally in your company. If you look at just at the top half of this slide, it shows a classic order process filled with human beings, as Lars has said before, checking, rechecking, double-checking, manual entry, et cetera, et cetera. So we had an order process with one of our distributors that really was like this. There was a human being pulling down information from their system, creating a PDF, sending it to an email to us. And we have, again, another human being open the email, open the PDF, manually type into SAP, and then finally we could do something with it. I'm sure this is actually very familiar to everybody. This kind of order process, and what we did with using these technologies, we we basically took a lot of this manual entry out. We introduced process automation. So this was a case of, number one, we standardized the data in our cloud. The cloud symbol on the bottom right-hand side. This technology we created an internal cloud, an RFS cloud, not a data warehouse, where we have this digital vocabulary defined and then linking all the data points coming into this shared space. So we were able to actually introduce this process automation, meaning then level 1 plus level 2, and we really are doing things better, faster, cheaper. That's the motto of every project that we do. We have to quantify, showing that we have done things better, faster, cheaper. Better is also simply taking the human manual entry out. Because of course there's an inherent error rate when you have a human being typing in data. So this is one live case, customer facing. Basically a no-touch order process in that direction. What we've also done internally, using this internal sharing space, we had the challenge of having 4 factories across the world where they had finished goods, cable finished goods inventory, and there was no visibility that could link across the world. So the challenge was, and this is where we really used our digital transformation efforts. The challenge was, at the very bottom, we had 4 different data models. Also, if you look to how you work with partners, you can say, okay, 4 different ERPs or data models. So we had 4 different, basically testing machines with their own data models, and we first had to decide on that meta model, that digital vocabulary, that ontology. We did that, and then using data science in an active machine learning algorithm, it tackled this disparate set of data to create this one digital vocabulary that is this metadata model. What really is actually a cool story with that is we had one of our factories. They had a 30-year-old Turbo Pascal software in the machine that was delivering binary code in a non-human readable format. So at first we thought, oh, okay, showstopper. It's not going to work. We have to scope out 25% of our finished goods inventory. So with our partner who we're working with, they actually used the beauty of data science. In their words, they used espionage style hacking techniques to hack the binary code, but it actually worked. So they were able to capture this crazy ununderstandable data set and then put it into our metadata model. And then now, that's through this active machine learning technique. Now we have it in our internal cloud, linked, not the data warehouse. And then this is where internally in the company you can really, you can start to talk about, well, now I have data as a service for the rest of my company. And then from that data, once it's there and clean, then you can start to get innovative and creative. How can you generate even more value? And one thing which popped out of this, which we had no idea about at the beginning, we also then saw, well, now that we have this data in the cloud, or linked in the cloud, centrally we can in near real time produce and give to our customers the actual test data for their equipment. And in the past, it would have to be at each individual site across the world, generating their own non-standard form. And of course, our customer would start to scream at us, why do I have 4 different formats of quality data, even different formatting of where the data is in the format. And it's a small example, but it's an example of when we talk about digitalization, the absolute core point is do it and improve the customer experience. That won't generate a new revenue stream for us, but of course internally we took off so much muda and just waste in getting to that point. So that was a side benefit of the projects, and we have a lot of customers who are simply happy. And actually now, Lars, Lars is still at Ericsson. I'm not at Nokia. I work for RFS, and Ericsson is one of our biggest companies. So that's why Lars is now smiling. One small reason. Okay, just as a joke. But the project scope was actually, we had two use cases for this data. We said, okay, well, let's create that smart big data now, and then our use case was we had two use cases. Number one was simply the easy one. Okay, sales can now look across the globe and simply pull finished good inventory that is relevant and makes sense for them because they're working off of this data that now augments their decision-making processes. That then the data makes sense for them. It's relevant, meaning for them it's actually smart at that moment. But also, what's also interesting then in SAP, we're able to introduce, relative to where we're starting from, advanced automation for automatic selection of finished goods based upon certain customer requirements. And in the cable world, we talk about things like reflection coefficients and impedance and et cetera, et cetera. But in the past, it used to be, again, a human being filtering through a ton of variables, data, et cetera. But now, like I said, we're able to introduce advanced automation behind this clean data now, because now also it's in a form that we can generate insights with. And the second use case is simply that our people working in plan, in SCORE plan, the global capacity planners now know exactly what kind of inventory positions they have where. And they have that in near real time. This is updated. It's actually updated daily. These 4 different test areas. Upload to some certain central data access point, and then from that point, the data is then pulled out and then transformed or lifted. What's called in that lifted through this ontology or through this digital vocabulary, and then we have it in our internal cloud. Ready to go. Data as a service. So this is something which I could really encourage the first few use cases being actually internal in your company, simply because there are too many variables on the outside. Finding a partner to actually do this, you would need to find someone who really is also an early adapter, or simply somebody from industry, like the industry working group that we got together. People who wanted to be early adopters instead of laggards, and just start to learn together. Co-learn, co-develop, and even to the point of sometimes we had some failures, but of course we had to learn from them. But that's the innovation process. Okay, and one last example. This is still unfortunately in the ideation phase. But working with AT&T, we wanted to have a true multi-tier use case where we could show and prove everybody working off the same data, and that we've then placed data through this cloud-based linking of the data, smart data, that everybody is working off of that, and also in at least near real time. And what was interesting is, once you have that clean data set, then we don't only have to talk about suppliers and buyers in the classic sense, but also there are companies out there that offer advanced analytics as a service. And like here's one, RapidMiner that we work with, and through this technology, you also open the door for these kinds of value adds for your company, and you give them access to this space in a limited publish subscribe mode. So you can you open your door of data, but only to a certain point for that certain provider. So you could even IBM also offers a cloud-based analytics as a service. So you can say, okay, dear IBM or RapidMiner, here's our clean or smart big data. Show me what your AI engine says. What your insights. What insights will you deliver back to me? It's possible. So we're still negotiating with AT&T, still in this working group. and this will be our next target. Okay, then next steps. Next steps are, as Lars had mentioned, but really is for us in supply chain, there's a lot of promise behind using the SCORE. SCORE today is I like to call it the two-dimensional information model. It's basically, for the point of view of data science, information science, it has a value of a dictionary. A term on one side, definition on the other side. But there's no context, or relationship between all the terms or between the data points. And there's a lot of promise to take that, which is the de facto standard of how we talk about supply chain, put this information model or data model behind it to create this ontology or digital vocabulary, to have a 3D data model behind the processes, behind the metrics. Then we could really enable machine-to-machine communication. We could really enable and then come to the promise of advanced analytics. And I'm sure that the people working in your area in business in intelligence or the data science people, everybody says, and the statistics are true, everybody spends like between 60 to 80% of the time just cleaning the data until applying their brain power on top of that data to actually do something, create value with that. When I left Nokia, our guys internally would say they actually spend 80% of their time. Because it's such a huge company like that, different BUs across the globe, no clean data model, so okay. And then Ericsson and RFS, we will continue. We are believers in this. And then for you, this doesn't happen in the Big Bang style. And we wanted to show this curve because you have to find a partner out there who is willing to be an early adopter, to small-scale pilots, to co-learn and co-develop. You have to start small. You have to create the learning platform in your company to enable people, processes, and tools. But I mean, that's just a normal innovation process, and this really would be an innovation project. Okay, then Q&A. Open it up.
Questions? Yes, please. Well, that is a built-in, so to say, that you get for free when you start to move down, go from the hierarchical database to a semantic database. So you can grow dynamically over time. That is built into the methodology, which is why it's so beautiful that you can actually start. That's why we use the kind of the piece of the cake type analogy. So we start small, and then if you want to do something more, when you take a next slice, and then you can make sure that you add the linkages in the core without having to redo everything you do for each and every slice.
And it's also most information scientists and data scientists, they recommend, even for an ontology, don't go for the Big Bang solution, like saying, okay, first create an ontology for the entire end-to-end supply chain. They say do it use case per use case, because these ontologies, they usually they're all publicly available in the web, and then you could actually use them and just enrich them with your use case. Like with these examples, we started with the order process. Okay, so the first order process ontology had the data points we all know, order confirmation, ASN, invoice. But then now, start to bring in, or next use case, the sensor data on your production. So you take this ontology and then just grow it per use case. Always, with this logic of subject, predicate, object, because you can hook on to one of these data points by giving the context, like linking the quality data at the end of the production line with the sensor data during production. So, if you started with only this quality data ontology, just a couple of points, like what I mentioned before, impedance, reflection coefficient, blah, 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 then now you have, sensor machine welding, sensor machine jacketing. You just link it in.
Any more questions?
Just one more. So a lot of what you said speaks to data, understanding links within your data. In other words, requires you to have a better understanding, making sure that your data is clean. A lot of that can be done through automation, all that kind of thing. In other words, the reports telling you where to key your data, and you should do this whole transition. What next? So let's say you're in a space where you've done those links, you've got the ordering process linked all the way through with your forwarders, your internal production linked, you have a big understanding, your information is really clean, system, all that kind of stuff. What next?
Well, first of all, the question here is now, what if you have, so to say, clean data with your partner, internally and with your partners already in place? First thing I will say, congratulations. Because this is, in the exercise that we ran on Saturday with the CEOs, logistics CEOs, now that was one of the points that we drove home, to be able to have clean data in the logistics process. Now you are all over an enterprise. I think, Paul, you were there. I think you were a bit baffled. We were talking about one single document, kind of with the data related to an invoice, and we were all over the enterprise. And so for many, that is quite intimidating, that you cannot, this kind of data-driven approach, you cannot solve it in the shipping area or in the distribution area. You have to go to product management, you have to go to design, you have to go to sales, you have to work with your master data. So for many, this journey can be quite intimidating. I'm coming back to Thomas's point here, that don't boil the ocean, don't do everything at once. At Ericsson, we did, the first step for us was to say, okay, let's pick something. And we picked the theme of a perfect invoice. Let's assume that we are going to do a perfect undisputable invoice to our customer. And Ericsson is a project-driven company, so we are selling hardware, software, and services to locations that anywhere in the world. So, up on Table Mountain, you put an antenna there. Sometimes it can be rather tricky to get it up in place. So it is not kind of consumer goods. And to have this saying, okay, now we have a perfect invoice for this radio antenna up on Table Mountain. What do you need to do? And that for us, that has been quite a journey. We are not there yet. No, first step, that's why I say congratulations if you have already done this. We ended up with a typical invoice containing 100 data elements. Now, to our surprise, when we did this was for a software-based business the first time, we found that over 30 of those data elements did not exist in digital form. We had them on paper. And that's, of course, if you're going to do fancy stuff on the level 3 in the maturity level, now where a third of your data is not even digitally available, then you have some homework to do. And this is now, this is why, so to say, where you need to pick a case, work it all through, and then go to the next one. If you have all the data in place, well, that's when you start to apply the advanced information management. So with all types of analytics, all types of process control. Now, where you set the business rule, and then you let the machine run your business. And so all of those fancy things that you hear the professors talking about here at that conference, well, then you can start to do that with high quality and with trust. Because you have to consider now, if you don't trust your data, if you don't have good quality data, now how dare you to put your business decisions into the hands of a machine? Now, and so it becomes kind of a balance game here now, how much you dare to automate. And now if you have done all the homework, level 1 and level 2 in the maturity level that we talked about here, then of course you should be very, very confident. And then you should be able to kind of be way ahead of the pack when it comes to the efficient utilization of the data.
And then where does AI come into that?
AI comes on, when you have clean data, trustworthy data, that you know what the definitions of, well, that's when you can start to have AI finding patterns or behaviors in your supply chain or in the application that you wouldn't see yourself because it's too granular. Then we take the example that Thomas had with the 4 different plants with 4 different sets of machines. Now, even though there are lots of commonalities, but there are also quirks to those. So for the test data now, on Mondays, the day after payday, you will have certain behaviors among the staff that will make the machine go sideways. We had a gentleman from a South African bank here. We talked about now on day after payday, the individuals were calling to get the amount of money on their account. They always called. The same person called every month, the same day, the same time. Now, you put an AI interface there, and 24 hours before they usually call, they have a text message saying your account statement is. So, and thereby you offload the call center. So those type of automation things you can do once you have trustworthy data to work on. Anything more? We'll be around if you, and we also have a workshop where we're going to dive even deeper into this on Wednesday morning.
Right.
So if you haven't signed up for that one, I hope there are still places left. So we'll be upstairs here on the 3-hour workshop on Thursday morning, or Wednesday morning. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thanks.